Hello, hello, everybody. We are about to go live right now, just waiting for my guests to join me. Hope you're having a beautiful day. And hopefully you want to stay with us while we have a pretty cool discussion. I sent you the request. Okay, perfect.
Hey,
Hello.
hey. Awesome.
All right, well, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Hearts Aligned podcast. I'm super excited to be here today with Damon. He is a spiritual teacher. He has some abilities that are extrasensory to where he can give you a psychic reading. He is on the mission to help people heal their trauma. And so I'm really excited to talk to you today about that. Um, I've always wanted to talk to a psychic. I've never talked to one before, so it's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for being on today.
No worries, no worries. And thank you as well for the invite as well. I've been super excited to do this, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome, me too. So I guess my first question for you, as you know, I'm so curious about this. When did you realize and how did you realize that you had these extrasensory abilities or that you were really intuitive and, one would say psychic? How did you come to find that?
Um, wow. Okay. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Just to quickly make sure, is everything okay with my screen? Can you see me okay?
Yes. Yeah, looks great.
Okay, good, good, good. Okay. Um, okay, yeah, so that was um a very, very long time ago, actually, when I think it was beginning of 2018, kind of maybe at the end of 2017, where it was so weird because I was looking at this photo of my inner child, and this word extrasensory kept popping up in my head. And at first I was like, why? Why? And then every time I kept looking at this photo of me at like 3 years old, it kept popping up. And so then at that time, I also I was dating someone, and what I started to do was kind of open up in terms of picking up stuff, like whether it was trees or her feelings, and she would mirror back to me and she would do the same. And that's when I kind of realized, like, okay, like I can sense stuff. And then I started doing like free readings just to test it out. And yeah, yeah, that's when I really knew. That's when I really knew that I could pick up on someone's hair color, I could pick up on something, how they were feeling, etc., and then I started to just expand it everywhere with animals. It's so funny you have your cat there.
Yeah.
My ex had a cat, and I think cats are so in tune with other dimensions. And so basically that was the start of it. But I would say properly integrated during my actual awakening, which was a year later. Yeah, which was a year later in 2019, when I was shedding a lot of negative core beliefs
Mhm.
and really reowning myself. Um, these abilities started to like integrate, because before that, I was actually in like codependency patterns. So if you've ever heard of the phrase like you walk into a room and like you can just pick up someone's energy and it's not yours and you um I don't know, have to sage yourself or to an extreme degree, people think like, oh, it's um it's, I walk into a shop and like, oh, I'm picking up everyone else's energy. Now at that time, luckily I also had a Tai Chi master and Qigong master. I remember bringing this up to him and he says, it's your choice, right? And I was like, oh. He's like, yeah, it's your choice to switch it on or off. Like it's your choice to choose who you're in tune with, basically. And I was like, oh, okay. Um, but yeah, basically during my awakening, they properly integrated basically those abilities. Yeah.
Okay. So you first realized it with your partner because you two were able to reflect back to each other. Or like, you could read, you had this connection where you could read each other.
Yes.
And then so you just decided to try it out then on friends or strangers. But I know what you mean about feeling the energy. And I wonder, does everyone feel that? And I feel like we're sort of all, it's just whether you're aware of it, right? Like, because don't we all get influenced by that?
Yeah. And I suppose that the way it affects you is down to your boundaries.
Yeah.
Which I know we'll talk about later. Um, but yeah, the way it affects you is down to your boundaries. If you have more codependency, the more it's going to hit you, basically. Where
Yeah.
it's almost like,
You don't have a shield.
basically, yeah, you don't have a protector, you don't have a boundary. Um, basically, yeah, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so could you tell us a little bit specifically, what are your abilities? How do they influence your life? How you experience life?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, it's a good question. Um, wow. Okay, so it's a whole range of things. Um, on my business side, on my service side, I use it to help people where I can give readings or I'm giving one-to-one healing sessions and I can tune into them. Um, Other times it's, it can be in friendships. Again, maybe healing sessions with friends, or sensing something if we're discussing something and offering them feedback or them offering me feedback. Um, Other times it's really interesting because the more in tune you are, the more you can sense stuff. I remember one time when I was living in another country. I was living in Sweden, and I ended up being dissociated because I was resisting this part of me, which kept saying, like, things are going to end here. And I didn't know that it was actually picking up, like, something. So I kept resisting it and resisting it and resisting it, and I had no idea, and I ended up a little bit dissociated. But then that whole situation with my friend, former friend, collapsed basically, and I ended up moving back to the UK. And it was so interesting because when I moved back to the UK, I sat with myself and I saw this like inner child, and the visual was like this alien inner child psychic kid. And the first thing he said to me was like, "I told you, like, I told you it was going to collapse." As soon as it did that, I felt this part come back, and I was here, like grounded. I was like, "Oh." So when we're in tune, we can like pick up things like maybe it's like stuff like that, like maybe future premonitions of like, okay, like something's going to happen in this friendship or something's going to happen in your life.
Mhm.
Um, Other things you can use it for. Well, sorry, other things I can do. I think that's about it, really. But in terms of like my abilities, in terms of say helping people, it can extend from like picking up someone's guides or channeling. Um, Guides is always a fun one to do because, like, it really hits your heart. Yeah, well, it hits my heart, and it really makes me emotional when I do some reading sometimes, and I'm really in tune, and I'm picking up someone's guides or um, their loved ones passing on, or someone they knew passed on. Other times it can be to do with their subconscious patterns. Other times it can be future timelines with them, So yeah, it varies. It varies, So yeah.
That's the part that I find so interesting because I've always believed in guides
Mhm.
and your guardian angels, and I think I have my own way of going about that. But the fact that you can sense other people's guides, that to me is what is extraordinary, right?
Yes.
Because a lot of us, we can have that within ourselves, hopefully. But yes, that's amazing to me. How did you know that you were tapping into someone else's guides?
That's a very good question. Um, I Oh, by the way, if I'm looking down, I'm just writing the
Of
timestamps for everyone in. So
course, no
I'm
problem.
not distracted. I'm fully like just so people know later when it's put up, basically. Um, so the first thing I get is like, honestly, it's always such love, and it really hits my heart. Like it honestly, like even now, if I tap into it a bit, it's like there's guys here, here, here. There's beings, and it's just such love that it makes me emotional. It's always here. I don't know if the camera can see, but I'm rubbing my chest. Um, and then well, I can fine tune into someone's like primary guides, because everyone has primary guides, and then they have like a lot of guides which come and go, like short-term guides. Um, and it varies because each one has a different personality, but they they all match the person's energy that they're guiding, basically. So with me, I have a lot of teacher guides. With someone else who may be good at writing, they may have a guide who was really good at writing in their life. You know, um, each like a different expression, and it's kind of interesting because you can have guides which are like your ancestors, or you can have guides which are from Earth. But you can also have guides which are not from Earth, and um, on higher dimensions, so to speak. So and you can also have animal guides. So it can vary, and I'm I'm wanting to learn more about different beings and where they come from, because this is the tricky part. Is it's like what information is there to trust? Because as me as I could probably do like some channeling or like some drawing of something that I pick up, but it's always nice to have that information. Like if there's a book or something, a video about Arcturians, for instance, and I know to trust that, from credible sources. So yeah, basically, that's how it happens. The heart, and then I can tune into like say their primary guides. And there's always like a feeling, and also it hits you. There's like a stream of energy, especially if they really want to say something.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you can't not say it. Like as the channeler, you have to say it, right? And I equate that to a lot of respect because I have a lot of respect for guides, etc. And they will always say, what is beneficial to that person. So say if I'm tuning into someone's guide and giving them a reading, they will always say what is beneficial for that person. What they think is. So it's like, yeah. So that's the other thing. A huge stream of energy just pours down from your crown. Honestly, um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's so interesting. Um, for me, I know that, um, I believe in guides as well, like you, and animal guides and signs, synchronicities. So for myself, the way I operate, I know I'm intuitive and I pick up on things, and I think I might be a slightly clairaudient. But the main way I operate in the world is I'm always asking for a sign, like and and so I'm always noticing the synchronicities, and that's something that is becoming stronger in my life, which has been really fun. When you first learn about the law of attraction and then you start looking for it. So yeah, so I would say that's what I do, but I love what you're talking about, how you're able to hear the messages from the guides. I'm sure it comes in different ways, like maybe like you see images or things like that too, right?
Yeah, so it comes in different ways for different people. For me, it's like it comes as a knowing, but I'm also like translating the energy. That's the thing. It's almost like there's an energy, and it's almost like you have to translate that into words. And that's what I'm doing. It's almost like it comes through, and then I translate that.
God.
I don't usually get images. Specifically with guides when I've done readings with people for their guides in terms of like images for them. I can get images in like healing sessions if I'm attuned to someone, but that's another thing. But yeah, it's more like translating the energy. That's really it's a little bit difficult to describe, but to summarize, yes, it comes through, and then I'm like translating that stream, and then I pour that out into words, basically. It's almost like you feel it, like I feel it, basically, in your heart, and yeah.
I know what you mean. I think I have I'm really tapped in with feeling as well. I would say if I'm at all psychic, it would be sometimes clairaudient channeling, but
Mhm.
also a lot of clairsentience, which is we're feeling it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But your gift is that you're able to translate that into words, and yeah, that's amazing. I love that. Um,
Thank you.
yeah. And can we talk about how boundaries can actually help enhance your psychic abilities?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so to summarize, the stronger your boundaries are, the better your ability to pick up on things, because it all comes down to attunement, basically. Now, with someone who, say, has a lot of codependency patterns, they're actually going to struggle with attunement, basically, where it's almost they're going to walk into like a shop or a public space, and they're going to be like, "Oh, I'm picking stuff up. Like, oh, I can't stop it." But they can stop it. It's mainly a part which is in self-sacrifice mode, basically, which is there's a really hidden motive, like maybe it's self-esteem on picking that up, actually, or wanting to be good, actually, that I can pick up on stuff. So when someone develops their boundaries, they get more and more and more and more solid, basically, and it's almost like the energy becomes more refined because there's no hidden motives there as
Mm.
well. So your abilities become refined and stronger. So the better your boundaries are, the better your ability to attune is as well. Mm.
Mm. That's amazing because it seems like I don't know why it seems counterintuitive to me. I think about boundaries as like closing things off or out,
Yeah,
but that's not really the case, right?
no.
Would you say that you're just kind of remaining in your own energy and aura? Like you're more tapped in?
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to choice with boundaries. It's almost like I get to decide.
Mhm.
It's a sense of self. It's like I say, okay, like um, I'm choosing. Whereas the opposite is
Mhm.
like the examples we used. I walk into a store, I'm feeling everyone's. It's almost like I have no sense of self and no choice, no free will.
Yeah.
It's a powerlessness state, basically.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, basically.
I relate to that feeling. I do understand that. So That's very interesting. Um, so what would you say, what are some of the ways that you help people heal their trauma?
Interesting. Um, so this is a good one. So with this one, it depends on the modality. That's what it always comes down to. It depends on what the individual needs. And I don't like this kind of rigid structure approach where it's someone working with a practitioner and it's like, right, we're going to do this one method, because the client may not know themselves, but then the practitioner may be so disconnected that they give them a rigid method. Whereas I'm more of the opposite. For instance, with healing sessions, I always have a free call with someone and they're telling me their issue. And then I see what kind of tool they need. Maybe they need a modality of parts work,
Mm-hmm.
where we're working with different aspects of the consciousness. Or maybe they need unconditional emotional presence, where we need to go layer by layer through the trauma and getting to the root. And then maybe we need to do something with that, such as the memory comes up, or maybe they need an opposite experience, such as, like, for instance, yesterday I was working with a client and we were working on some anger, some suppressed anger. And what I allowed them to do was to push me away, but I was staying. And I wanted them to bring that anger up and that suppressed rage and to push me away. But I wasn't leaving them because their fear was that if they brought up their anger in like a connection or to someone, that they're bad, they're going to get scapegoated, etc. And so it was almost like, and I was so attuned to them. And I've done this before. The reaction people have is like it's unusual, in that certain case. So with that, it's like helping people with the opposite experience in that way. Like sometimes it can be acceptance, where it's like that person I'm working with, the client, is looking at me and I'm telling them, or asking them, I should say, can you see that there's acceptance? I always like to ask questions rather than
Mm-hmm.
how, I should say, because it helps them tune into themselves and be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, is he gonna leave? Are they gonna stay? He's staying. It's like that they have that curiosity and they get to tune into themselves. So there's various ways that I work with people when it comes to sessions. Yeah.
Nice. Um, do you think that people are suppressing their anger if they are kind of like lashing out at people? Like, because a lot of people okay, I won't say a lot. There are some people I know that, yeah, it feels like they have this anger, or I don't know exactly what it is, but they will lash out, or just, it seems like they just, yeah, are quick to anger about something that is or they're irritable, or you know what I mean? It kind of like,
hmm
yeah, I wonder what that is, if that's like suppressed anger or...
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be suppressed anger, but also suppressed pain
Yeah.
underneath that, because it's almost like the pain there with people like that is so suppressed that it's almost like if you touch them, something snaps. The anger comes out first. So yeah, there's suppressed anger, but it's more so that there's suppressed pain and that there's a lack of boundaries. It's almost like they don't, people who lash out like that, they don't know themselves very well.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have good boundaries, aka anger, basically. And so at the root, it's a lot of suppressed pain.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's like grief that turns in. I heard this, that I think like grief can turn into rage if it's not expressed. Or I know that's also just part of feeling grief, is that's like a stage of it as well. So, yeah, so would you say that you kind of help people unlock these things that they are suppressing?
Yes, yes, yes. The the root of it is always, I should say, the core of it is always to heal trauma and to make progress,
Mhm.
and to have some results. So yeah, in that way, I suppose so. It could be something they're suppressed or something that is coming up that they're conscious of, but they're stuck on, such as two parts of themselves. Um, yeah, just at the core, it's always healing trauma. Mm.
And so that kind of leads into my next question, which was, what are you most passionate about in life? I feel like this is sort of, this is it, right?
Yeah, this would be it. Healing trauma. What am I most passionate about? Yeah, healing trauma, teaching. If I was to sum it up, it would be teaching people about life, how to shift their lives, how to become more authentic, and how to have what they want. That's my purpose. That's what I am super passionate about, and I would do until the last day I live on this planet, honestly. Like, it's something that I hold very, 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 very dear to my heart, if not my heart. And it's something that's honestly, like, even through my own dark times, the number one thing that's kept me going, if I've ever been in like a dark time, is like purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like a purpose. Like, so I hold my purpose and I hold this passion very, very dear to my heart. So this would be it. Yeah, I want to help as many people as I can on this planet, because there's nothing more fulfilling to me. Like, it's always been that. Not that I've always known that it was that, but like when I did know, yeah, it's always been that. Um, yeah,
Well, it makes a lot of sense because it seems that that is the root cause of everything. Um, in school, I studied crime, and that,
really.
yes, so that's what my background, it's all about crime.
That is
And yeah, and so what I ended up studying really was, you know, I just kept like breaking down the symptoms. Okay, so we have crime, and what's underneath that? Okay, poverty, substance abuse. Okay, what's underneath substance abuse? Right? Trauma. And so it just, everything that I ended up writing about and researching and learning about at the end of the day was trauma.
That's so interesting. That's so fascinating. I thought, like, I've always thought, if I was in like, if there was a Damon in a parallel life, I'd be like a criminal detective or something like that. It would be really dark, but I'm like fascinated by patterns, and it would be something like a criminal detective, like finding out these like really, really dark patterns and um understanding them, basically. You
Mhm.
know, yeah, that's
It's
really interesting.
at the root of it all. Yeah. Um, that's why I'm not really in that field, is because it was a little too dark for me
Absolutely,
in,
absolutely.
in real practice, right? Because I love the concepts, like learning. I'm very fascinated by it. But when it comes to the practice in everyday life, I realized it was too much darkness for me.
Yeah,
I
absolutely,
wouldn't have been able to handle that. Not,
absolutely.
yeah, not at all. So yeah, but it taught me so much, and that's still something that I'm the most interested in, really, is our psychology. Um and I'm sure both of us also have in common, like our upbringings probably weren't the easiest, and um, we had to learn how to navigate and understand these concepts on our own, right? Like later on in life. And so we had to pull ourselves out of these dark places. And then it makes sense that that becomes your passion, is to want to help other people come out of those places as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I very much admire what you're doing, and yeah, having that meaning in life, it does keep you going through it all. And we need people like you more than ever. So
I appreciate that. And yeah, I wanted to add it was fascinating how I discovered this basically. Because growing up I wanted to be different things like I think for about 8 or maybe 9 years I wanted to be a paleontologist because I love dinosaurs until I realized you had to study biology, and then I was like, okay, no, I hate science, etc. I'm not gonna, go in that direction. And then I wanted to be a chef because I was watching cooking shows, and then I stopped that. And then I thought, okay, what do I want to be? Maybe uh, maybe something to do with a film. And then I remember this girl um, said when I was doing like a public speech in the class, she said, "Hey, you're really good. Maybe you should be an actor." And then I thought of being an actor, and then I thought about getting into film, and then I thought no to acting, and then a producer, and then a director. So I changed a lot. But when I went to university, and then I was studying film, and I wanted to be a film director. All of a sudden, it hit me that I was so bored in my second year, and I hit this point. I remember I was in my room, and it was almost like everything kind of like collapsed. There was this feeling of collapse, where it was like, oh my God, like, what am I gonna do in my life? Like, there's nothing. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. It was almost like there's like this empty space I could feel. And I remember just for a week, I did this practice from Eckhart where he said, treat everything you do as if it was your purpose. So if I'm on this live right now with you, that's my purpose. If I pick up this crystal, that's my purpose right now. If I drink this glass of water, that's my purpose. So I did that for about a week. And then I was watching some videos from spiritual teachers, and then I saw one. Um, I saw one from a teacher that I really love, and she was on stage, and she was giving a workshop, and um, it was Teal. And
I knew it.
yeah, and I thought to myself at that moment, like, something about that was like, what if I do that? And I was like, why? And I was like, because it's helping people, and it's like bringing me joy. And there's also like, when I was watching that, that might have come after. I think maybe first what I did was actually ask myself like, okay, I'm watching this and she's helping people, and like, I don't know, maybe it's something to do with helping people, because why do I want to do film? And I was like, because I wanted to create movies like Inception or The Matrix. Why? Because I wanted people to feel. I wanted them to laugh, to feel angry, to cry when they're watching a movie. I wanted them to feel things. Why? Because I wanted to get them in touch, with themselves, to feel. And I was like, why? Because it helps people. So I was like, that's the core reason I wanted to do films, to help people. So it's my core thing is something to do with helping people. And then, I was watching this workshop, and then I was like, interesting. Why don't I just cut to the chase and help people in the most direct way possible, which is this work? So, which is helping them see their resistance to the things they want, to their desires. So that's how it came about. Yeah.
That, that's awesome. I I think that yeah, so many of us, we do change our minds so many times, and nothing that we have done is in vain. It all got us to where we are now. But it is just, you know, when well, you brought up the matrix. Once you break out of that matrix, then you can realize, you can do different things. You don't
Mhm.
have to subscribe to these rigid, ideas of what careers and jobs are, and you can actually live your purpose and be devoted to that and committed to that, because at the end of the day, money doesn't matter as much as that, because living out your purpose is making you feel fulfilled, and it's keeping your light alive, and you just feel, when you're not living by your purpose and you're just forcibly going through the motions, and it feels like you're selling your soul.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah,
And
yes.
I'm speaking as someone who's still trying to find my way out of that, but
Mm,
has begun that. But it is a journey, right? You're learning, but you're unlearning.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's a journey. It's a journey of discovery and exploration. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Okay. So, should we pivot into talking about a topic that is very relevant right now? Well, since the pandemic, but even now after the pandemic, just in our age of technology, where I am very grateful for it. I love that I can connect with you over in the UK, and me be over in the US. Like that's fantastic. But there is also more loneliness than ever, it seems. Suicide rates are up. And what do you think we can do to start kind of healing this loneliness that so many people are feeling?
Yeah, that is a big one. Uh, it's interesting because I spend quite a lot of time on the internet, and I can only imagine and empathize and feel, I should say, I should feel for people who, that I see, say, a post on Reddit or someone, or people who maybe don't post, but they like have these negative core beliefs about themselves, like I'll never find a guy or I'll never find a girl, and because I see, like, for instance, I see so many people struggle with dating. So I can only imagine the people who we don't see on the internet, and they're on the homes, and they like feel so lonely. This is such an epidemic. Whether it's dating or friendship or family or there's varying degrees, or whether it's someone who's surrounded by people, but they still feel lonely.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's such a it's a it's a global issue. It's an epidemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
The number one thing about it, though, is that loneliness basically means you aren't being yourself. At the end of the day, it's because people aren't being themselves. Now, people may hear that and be like, but I introduce myself to someone, and like I shake their hand, and I go to a pub, or I go to a concert, or I go somewhere, I say hello to people. That doesn't equate to like connection, though. And that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
equate to a fulfilling, compatible relationship where needs are met. Loneliness is about not being authentic, not being who you are, because there are splits inside a person where one part of them may really want connection but give themselves up, versus another part which really doesn't want connection and may be on guard and actually be like, no, I hate people, I really don't want people. There's all these splits, basically. And because there's these splits, that means there's a trauma, and the trauma is in the way of that person knowing themselves, basically. It's almost like that analogy of every single person, their higher self, their soul, their essence, whatever you want to call it, is like a light.
Mm-hmm.
The trauma is all the cobwebs or the shadows, in front of it. This is what's interesting because, um, I was working with the client again yesterday, and this will probably relate to the topic of healing we will discuss later. But with this client, when I was channeling one of their parts, the trauma was identified with, and there was nothing that anyone could say where it could like convince this part of like, yeah, you're loved. Yeah, you're understood. Like I see you, etc. It was like identified with that trauma, and it said, I don't know who I am because this is all I see. AKA, I'm bad. I'm low self-worth. And so what's interesting now is like I do see people like whether it's in groups that we know, such as Teal Tribe, etc., or outside of that, where people are trying to discover themselves and trying to say like, oh, this is what I need, say, from a partner, but they've got all this trauma, and then 6 months later, they're still in the same position. Another 3 months later, they still haven't manifested that person because they're not healing that trauma. Like, you can know yourself a little bit, but you've got to heal that trauma. And that also means got to heal these splits. Once these splits have healed, that loneliness is no longer there because it's almost like, for instance, one typical thing about loneliness that's quite general is it comes from a lot of scapegoat wounds. It comes from a lot of shame. For instance, if someone will feel lonely and they could be like, I'm never, let's take this. Let's say there's a person who's, let's say there's a woman sitting on the couch and, she has an apartment and she's watching TV and she sees a romantic movie and then she may feel this trigger. And she's like, oh, I'm on dating apps. When will I ever meet that person? I don't feel like I'll ever meet that person. And she maybe traces those thoughts back to, oh, I'll never meet the person. Why? Because there's no one out there for me. Why? What am I making that mean about myself? Because I'm not good enough for anyone. Okay. Why? Because I'm bad. What am I making this mean, or why? Or how does that make you feel? Makes me feel like life is against me. That's a scapegoat wound. That's a negative core belief, and there's a scapegoat wound of feeling like life is against you. Scapegoat wounds and shame correlate with each other, basically, and that creates this is a big wound in loneliness. That creates a lot of loneliness inside people, basically. And so, if that's not healed, that person is constantly walking around with a belief of I'm bad. It's like that's all they know. But once that is healed, let's go to the yeah, when that's healed, it's almost like that meaning they made at like 3 years old or 5 years old of like I'm bad, it releases because that's what the emotion and the thought wants to do is it's wanted to do for such a long time. It releases, and there's almost like, oh, like the sense of the authentic sense of self is able to come back. It's like, yeah, I'm good, as in I've always been good, if we're using the scapegoat example. And so because of that, then they're able to have, for instance, stronger boundaries and a stronger sense of self. Then they're able to figure out who's compatible to them and who's not. Um, this is why, like, for instance, like one relationship disaster, not like romantic, but relationship in general, like connection, friendship, etc. One relationship disaster is two people coming together who don't know themselves very well. That's going to end up in a disaster because there's going to be maybe trauma bonds, there's going to be hot and cold, maybe there's back and forth, subconscious patterns, sweeping things under the rug, you know, so a lack of boundaries. And then, yeah, basically, I lost. my train of thought there. Just tracing it back. That would be, that would, that's a relationship disaster. So that's it. So it's important to know, who you are by healing these traumas, which heal the loneliness, basically. Because then, it's the opposite of inauthenticity. You're authentic. To just put it simply, once you've healed, you become authentic. That light shines of who you really are, basically. And so you're able to find out, oh, this is what I need. And it's interesting because obviously, like, you can look on, if you look on the internet, there's people who may say like, oh, like, I really need this, I really need to be looked after in a relationship, but I'm so scared of that. It's like a trauma there that hasn't been healed. But when that trauma is healed, it's almost like, yeah, I need someone to look after me. Of course I do. There's not this, it's like a very like definitive answer. It's not like this shaky, like, there's no
Mhm.
scattering of the energy there. It's just like, yeah, of course, this is me, you know? Um, so there's no shame there. There's no self-blame, basically. So loneliness is about, people really not being themselves and a lot of trauma and a big trauma, to kind of summarize this, a big trauma is a lot of shame, a lot of scapegoat wounds, basically. And in order to, you know, find actual connection, you've got to heal that trauma because there comes a limit. It's like you can't discover yourselves if there's still cobwebs. It's like the analogy. If there's still cobwebs, it's like, oh, but I need this and I need this and I need this. But it's like, well, that's maybe a part of it, but then that can also change if the trauma's healed as well, you know? So, and then you would probably discover more boundaries and more suppressed needs that you didn't realize. Like, oh, I healed this trauma of my mom abandoning me. Boom, the trauma's healed. Oh, okay, I need a partner who's available all the time. That's it. Then you go for someone who's available. That's simply it. Then it's healed. That's really it, yeah, to summarize.
And also, the quote kept coming up in my head that you described, like, we can only meet people as deeply as we've met
That's
ourselves.
a really, really good one. That's
Yes.
really
And so that's what you're describing, right? So,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
how are we supposed to connect with other people, and how are we supposed to integrate with others if we ourselves are not integrated and we are disconnected from ourselves?
yes, absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
You that was I summarized it with that, but that's what you were.
absolutely.
Yeah, that
No, but that's a really beautiful saying. That's a really, really beautiful saying. Yeah,
it's very true. And and yes, when you know yourself, like you were saying, you know who you are, and you have those boundaries, and then you can be authentic, then you can have those connections. And also, we're not judging people and pushing them away as much because we're not doing that to ourselves. So then we can accept other people more and still love them as they are. Because we all have flaws. And we all have like these blind spots and things we're working on. Yeah, so that helps as well. All right, so now let's bring it around to why are some people stuck in a loop of healing?
oh, that's a big one. Um, I'm loving this, by the way. This is really fun.
This is really fun.
This is really fun. I just wanted to share that with you. It's
I'm
really
so
fun.
glad you're having fun.
Yeah. Okay, this is a big one. So the question, why are people stuck in
A
a loop with thing?
Yeah, of healing. Why do we?
Oh
I
man.
mean, the word layers is coming because you've been peeling back the layers, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, people feel like they are just constantly healing and that there's no end. Is there an end?
Um, so yeah, with the healing, Well, there's two things. With what you said, I can see the chat. First of all, what's a loop of healing? So, what I meant by that is when people are trying to heal, but they're stuck in healing. It's almost like I've done this method 500 times. I've sat with myself for 1,000 hours. I still have this issue. This trigger is still coming up. I've spent so much time with this part of me, you know, um, nothing's working, you know. So that's what I meant by that. But it relates to what you were saying of also like people like constantly looping and can be like, oh, like when will this ever end? That actually ties into this, where that person may actually not be fully integrating, basically. I say that because when someone's tasted integration, it's like tasting a food that you really like, or yeah, tasting a food that you really like that's like super beneficial for your body. You want it again. There's no such thing as when is it going to end. The reason people have that relates to what I'm about to talk about, which is why they're stuck or trapped in healing. So to summarize, sorry, I get distracted by the comment, but I think it relates to it. Do you think acceptance plays a part in having so much resistance? That 100%. That yeah. So 100% that relates. So let's say you go online on the internet and you see people, whether it's in Teal Tribe or Eckhart Tolle's group or some other spiritual group, and they make a post for the 5th time or the 10th time, and they're like, "I'm stuck on this," or "Why do I always attract these kind of men?" or "I can never find this person," or "Why do my friendships always fall out?" or "I'm always stuck, I'm always lonely, I'm struggling with anger," or whatever it is. It's like so many issues, and it's like constantly again and again and again and again. And then there's other people where it's like, "Oh, I dropped that method and I'm trying more gentler stuff now," and but they're maybe writing posts about how they still haven't found or manifested what they want, right? Maybe they've tried to run away from spirituality. It's like, okay, I've dropped that. What's happening is they're trapped in healing and they're not actually integrating. Why? Because there is a part in people which has a core sense, which is a part of their concept of shame, their core sense of shame, that's taking over the healing process. And it identifies with I. And it's always scrambling for more and more and more. What method can I try? Okay, I've tried, say, parts work so many times. I'm going to drop spirituality. I'm just going to be myself. That doesn't work. Their life still hasn't improved as much. Okay, I'm stuck. Maybe I go back to that method, or maybe I sit with myself for 5 hours. Well, the pain's still there. Why? Because what's happening is this identification, basically. And I will give you a really good example, which is my story, and I'll relate to other spiritual teachers' stories as well. I was literally in this position when I chose to leave my home for 3 years, and I just had a red suitcase. I barely had any money. I was sleeping on some guy's couch in the back of his apartment was so small, it's like the back of a Domino's pizza place. I didn't have any friends. I had no direction. That was like rock bottom for me. And this was in 2019. And I had no contact with my family. I'd run away and I had no idea how to make money. I was just on this guy's couch. I was trying method after method. I was doing parts work. I was watching spiritual teachers' videos. I was watching YouTube videos over and over and over again. I was reading blogs. I was like, there's got to be something. Like, I'm stuck. Then there came a point, this was in June, I think around June the 14th or 9th, something like that, around the middle of June. After about a week of staying at his place, there came a point where it was like 1 a.m. and I sat on the couch and he was asleep. and the dog was asleep, and I was sitting cross-legged on the couch, and I was feeling so like I didn't want to be here because there was nothing. It was completely rock bottom. I had no money, nowhere to go. Didn't want to be on this planet, and so I gave up. It was an actual like giving up, like an actual surrender. There was no healing method. I was like, I've done everything I can. All of a sudden, this split happened in me. All this shame and feeling like life was against me, all these feelings were here. Then there was something witnessing that, and I could not describe it in words. I couldn't even say I. Like that thought, the thought couldn't come up, and I had no idea what it was. But when that was there, I didn't do anything. Like it was almost like something was happening to me, and the closest thing I can describe it was the most purest love there ever is. And this all of a sudden just came up out of my body, and I grieved like I had never grieved before in my entire life. And I had no idea what happened to me. Then it happened the next day when a trigger was brought up, and then the next day, and the next day, and I started doing research. I went back to, it was almost like I was in this um, purification phase. And I started to look at old teachers' blogs. Maybe it was Thiel's blogs. Maybe it was Eckhart Tolle's Awakening. Maybe it was some ancient teacher from in a cave. Maybe it was some ancient poetry, like spiritual poetry. And I found the same thing happen, and that was what was happening to me. If you read Eckhart Tolle's book, in the first few pages, he talks about having, he wanted to off himself. He had a gun, and then all of a sudden a split happened. And he didn't know how to describe it, but something was there. Same thing happened with the Teal. And if you read her blogs on the Dark Night of the Soul, she talks about something had happened where what we call the ego, which is this, the ego identifies with all these core negative beliefs at first, such as shame. It sheds all that. And so I went through this shedding process. Luckily there was a park near me, and there was a tree I would sit under, and all these triggers would come up. And I shed them and shed them, and I started to realize, oh my God, like this is healing. This is what actually is healing. And I realized that's why people are stuck, is because there isn't a disidentification that's taking place. And that's what happened with me. People are identified with this part of them that wants to heal, but I should say wants to be good, because it comes from this such a deep, deep, deep wound of I am bad, or life is against me. It's a scapegoat wound, basically. And so why people are stuck is because there hasn't been a disidentification, and it is super, super hard to teach, because people can read a book or watch a video on like disidentification, but the problem is that part of them is so I can't find a better word than strong. Say if I was in their shoes, and I was in their shoes. If I was to watch a video and then like on disidentification, and that teacher says, okay, let's say do a visualization where you zoom out and zoom out, it's still that I that's doing it. It's like, okay, I'm zooming out, I'm zooming out. Even if you think you're not, it's still that part, basically. And so that's still taking over. And the the process of that healing for me was, to bring it back to the person in the chat bringing up acceptance. It was a deep sense of acceptance, and also allowing. It was so much allowing. And then what happened in that healing, which is so key, was this thing which I could not name, which is, to put a label on it, higher self or essence or soul or the universe. It felt like all these aspects of me, whether it's an inner child or something traumatized, it felt like it could hold on to that and trust that. Not me as Damon, because I was also unshedding then, but those inner children could trust that, and it like held on to that, and it was this safety. And it was almost like I rooted back down into the earth here. And there was this also, during my experience, there was a sense of almost oneness experience, and it was like a knowing. It was like, oh, okay. And this, it was almost like a knowing of how life works. It wasn't a mental thing. It's so hard to describe. It really is, because, but I'll give you an example. It's like, when I was in that state during that phase, like there was one time where I was like purely just in that shedding process. I was here and now, you know. I remember eating breakfast really, really slowly and then just feeling like this gratitude, like so much gratitude. And then I remember going to the shops that evening, and I remember like catching this deal that they had on like all this vegan food, and it was so cheap. It was less than $1, or in America, it was less than £1 here, and I was like, oh my gosh, like things started to manifest. The same with when I needed a new place to stay. Like I knew all I had to do was just deal with the resistance and put out that desire, and something would happen. I was still scared, but then something did happen, and I ended up finding a place like in a week um, without needing to pay for it. And so I was able to see how literally life works. And that's the thing, because that can relate to when people are so identified with this concept of shame, they need to keep watching YouTube videos. They need to keep reading books on the law of attraction. It's like their soul knows it, but they don't know it because these beliefs, these scapegoat beliefs or these negative core beliefs are in the way, And so it makes sense when you know, someone doesn't trust life and thinks that life is against them. They go through that and they realize what life is. It's almost like just this pure love, and they're able to rely on it. And it's like they're able to come back to themselves. It's this deep acceptance. Like another example was, I was during this process, I was afraid. After like a month, a trigger came up where I was afraid I was going to get kicked out of the guy's house. And I remember he went outside to have like a cigarette and like smoke something, and I was sitting on the couch and this trigger was coming up. Like, he could kick me out. This is not my place. He could kick me out anytime. And I was like, okay, what am I really afraid of? Okay, I'm afraid of being kicked out. Okay, why? Because then I'll end up on the streets and I'll be homeless. Okay, why? Well, what am I making that mean? I'll probably die. I won't survive, and life is against me. There was this pure allowing of that, of like that just is. That just is. Nothing needs to change. That's kind of what it unconditional means. And there was a surrender of that. And all of a sudden, that trigger wasn't there. It just flowed through. Now, funny thing is, he did come back then after I healed that trigger. He came back in after smoking a cigarette, and he did say, Damon, I want you to know you can stay here as long as you want. so, 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 I find stuff like that so funny.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, so I wanted to share that because um, I wasn't able to hold on to anything, and that's what it means by ancient spiritual teachings. Like when people have said like let go. Now, the way most people teach it now is they don't know about this, what I'm talking about. However, there is a truth in terms of letting go, because we are holding on to the trauma, but it's out of a protection mechanism. We're not doing it on purpose to hold on to trauma. We're doing it because we don't trust life. It's like a coping mechanism. It's like, I've got to hold on to this trauma because I'm still in that survival state as I was like 3 years old. That's why it's not let go of. But when that's let go of, it's like your identity starts to be let go of, and you start to discover who you really are. Then you start to integrate that authenticity. And then, the sweet stuff is you're able to find out more of your compatibility, more of friends, etc. Like for me, like I healed a lot of narcissistic and codependent patterns when I was in that, and I was able to find out more compatibility, with what I need. Yeah, a lot. Like there's a story with my attraction that shifted. I remember during that phase there was a trigger that came up around my ex. She didn't do anything at all, but I was just seeing her on social media, and there was a trigger. And then I spent, I think, about 2 days on the couch there, and this memory of me really young, and then my mom leaving the room, and this abandonment trigger came up. After allowing, after that healed, it felt like something had like shifted, like a timeline had shifted, and it was so funny because this was the first time I had ever experienced this, where my attraction to someone had completely changed. And I was like, I'm no longer attracted to that person. Like she's physically attractive, but that emotional like pull isn't there. And I was like, this is insane. That's when I was like, this is like, this is insane. But to go back onto your point, like even when I said that of like, this is insane, there was joy in that. That's because I knew that when I was healing, I was shifting things, and a lot of my life was shifting things. It's like when I gave the analogy of the food, once you taste it and it's beneficial and it's really nice, there isn't a thing of like how long is this going to take? Because even that comes from a negative core belief of like, maybe it's a harshness towards self. Maybe I do see this with people in general when they say like, how long is this going to take? There is a harshness where it's like deep down there's something there of like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm always trying to work on this, like, and it feels like a treadmill. And it's because deep down I feel like I'm not good enough, and I have to keep trying, improving and improving. And some people, um, there's always like this tug of war of like, I want to rest, I have to heal, but that's when they haven't fully tasted that, this basically. And so, um, yeah, basically,
Sorry
to
about
to
that.
summarize.
Okay, drink some water.
It's totally okay. And to sum it up, basically, people are stuck in this healing because they haven't disidentified, and that comes from this surrender and this giving up. It's not like, again, even when I say that, I don't want people to say like, oh, I have to give up now and I'm going to try that method to heal. No, no, no. It's purely like, imagine if like there was a belief of like, I'm not good enough. Okay, that just is. And that starts to terrify because that was coming up during my um, awakening in 2019. This process was my awakening. And it was almost like I could feel that ego almost like shake in me of like, uh-oh, like nothing's happening. I'm not moving. I'm not trying to like, okay, it's like valid to feel this, I love you so much. I wasn't trying to do anything. It's just, okay, what if it was that? It starts to terrify it, but then it starts to shake and break those kind of jail bars of that belief. And then that acceptance and that allowing comes. And it just flows through. Like I didn't really need to do like a process. I didn't need to do much. It just like emotions should do. They flow out. And so like that's why people are stuck basically in that. And it's really hard to teach. And a lot of people aren't teaching it basically. So yeah. Yeah.
My cat joined the party.
I love that you can't join the party.
What is it? Blue? Oh, said hi.
Hey.
She's always trying to get in the mix.
Oh, her eyes are beautiful.
Oh,
Her eyes
thank
are
you.
beautiful. Oh, wow.
Wow, I feel like I was having so many shifts within me, like hearing you talk about that.
No worries. And yeah, to answer someone's question, pitchfork Patty, is it always shame or is it also fear and uncertainty? They can both go together. When people are dealing with this, if there's a big concept of shame, it almost like goes together. Like that, actually, you reminded me there was something of like one trauma that came up for me during that time was almost like life is out of my control. Like I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm trying to control it. And it's almost like this uncertainty. But when I traced it back, it was like, again, it was like, well, I feel that things go wrong. Why? Because they always do for me. Why? Because I'm bad. Like there's so much scapegoat wounds and scapegoating that happens to children. Like there's so much and there's so many beliefs, but whether it's something caregivers did or didn't do, but the core issue is um, what I found was a lot of the traumas are actually because of what we made them mean. That's when it gets personal. And then it was so funny because um, I remember that coming up, like I think maybe a few months or like later during this awakening thing. Um, I saw Teal say that, and I thought, oh, that makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
That's what I found is like my mom walked out of the room, but I made that mean that I was wrong. I made that mean that I was bad, and so a lot of trauma, that core trauma, is about what we make it mean, and then we make it personal, which is what shame is. We take things personally. So that's how it correlates. Yeah,
Yeah, that was something that I had to learn in adulthood as well,
yeah,
because we really like take it personally the way that we're treated by strangers even, and it can affect us and we can make it mean things about ourselves as well. And of course it that would stem from childhood. So
yeah,
yeah, that's a really good point.
mhm, yeah, yeah,
So then does this also tie into the last thing we were going to talk about, was people who are having trouble manifesting what they want? Is that seems like it's related to this as
yeah.
well, right?
Absolutely, it's perfectly related. Um, People struggle with manifesting what they want because they're not healing that trauma and also not disidentifying to heal that trauma. Because it's like some people may desire like a partner, like really, really strongly. They may do a lot of positive focus. They may, etc., do meditations. But here's the thing about manifestation that I want to talk about and touch upon is a lot of it also comes from choice as well. Well, what I mean by that is, say a woman is desiring a partner, and she's been desiring it for like 2 years now, right? And nothing still has happened. That's again related to what we've kind of discussed, where the trauma is there and she doesn't know how to heal, aka disidentify and then heal. And so those cobwebs and that trauma is still there. So nothing can actually manifest, and she doesn't know herself very well, meaning she doesn't know what choices to make, aka who to go for and who not to go for, which all comes down to compatibility. Because it's almost like, for instance, after this awakening, after like 2 years, this was in 2021, when I came back to the UK, I wanted a companion. And before, my former friend was that companion, but that friendship had fallen out. And so I decided, okay, what's next for my life? Maybe a partner. Okay, so I decided to, okay, let's try a relationship again. I then knew that in order to manifest that, all I needed to do was work with the resistance and then do some exercises to see my subconscious and like what my subconscious is on board with, like some psychology tests and stuff like that. And I remember doing what I did was I went on dating apps a bit and I focused on it a little bit and I managed to heal some resistance. And then I remember for like 3 days I just like listened to a soulmate meditation by Teal. then on the fourth day that I remember there was someone I knew in my social circle, and we had a call, and it was almost like we both knew. We were like, I hate the I don't like this kind of we knew we were like twin flames basically, but I don't, when I say that, I don't mean that I looked at that stuff, because I don't like that kind of general community basically. But basically that word kept popping up the same way extrasensory did at the beginning of our talk, and I was like, twins, okay. And then of course we dated and kind of got together. It didn't work out, but it was so funny that it happened on like, day three or day four of like, I should say after day three of listening to like the soulmate meditation. But it was like that's how I knew. Like I already knew that's how life operates, and I made the choice of like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. This is who I'm gonna go for. It's like, yeah. So people are stuck in manifestation because, yes, they've got to heal their trauma, and then they can know themselves, and then they'll know what choices to make, and they'll just naturally move in that direction. They'll naturally move forward. Like, okay, I want my money. Okay, like maybe I'm gonna learn marketing or something I'm good at, or cooking, or maybe I'm gonna, yeah, just learn a skill that I'm good at or that I like, make money off of it. So it's like, yeah, um, healing that trauma, and um, you'll know yourself more. You know your compatibility, and you'll know what choices to make, and you'll move forward naturally in that direction. Mm. And then things will line up for you. You know, um, yeah. Honestly, it's like when you heal, it's like things will shift. Like, I'll give another example, which is really good, to do with finances. Like, I I wanted to work on this split within me with a friend 2 years ago, and it was financial. It was a financial split, and I noticed there was a part of me that was narcissistic, but felt rich. There was another part of me which felt very poor, which is the one I'm more identified with. I wasn't really aware of the rich part because I grew up poor. Um, kind of poor. Um, and so me and a friend worked on this for 2 weeks. These parts got to see each other. They healed. On the second week, literally the day after it was healed, someone wanted someone. I wasn't advertising. I wasn't marketing. I wasn't doing anything with my business. Someone found my website and wanted to book with me and pay me a lot of money. It was like £2,000, £2,200 for like a course of mine, and it was like that. Just the day after. Same with the romantic one. That was the day after. You know, but that's what it is in manifestation. Like, even with that old relationship that in 2021, that didn't work out. At the end. But then after that, I was like, okay, what's next? What can I learn from there? Okay, my boundaries need refining. Why did I let this person treat me that way? Okay, that needs healing, etc., etc. So that's, yeah, to just share those stories alongside, what to do in terms of manifestation. Yeah, yeah. Mm.
I feel like a big part of it is, well, like you mentioned, so like disidentifying with those negative emotions and beliefs, like knowing that your emotions are not who you are, right? So you're not identifying with them, letting them then pass and move through you. Um, so you're not suppressing them, but so you're feeling them, you're flowing with them, and then you're kind of surrendering and having your positive intentions of what you want and focusing on that, focusing on what you want to create, but having that like surrendering to, and I think that's where spirituality comes in, right? Because it's like you're kind of surrendering to forces that are greater than you, right?
That's when it's like an integration of like life, like not just this dimension. It's almost like life, everything, the universe, you, your higher self, you know, your soul, whatever you want to call it. It's like your temporal and eternal self, basically. Yeah, 100%.
So when you take all of those steps and then you are aware and being intentional and purposeful about what it is that you're wanting to bring in, and just taking those steps, like, and to just keep intending and focusing on that, and you'll be really surprised with how quick it happens. And like when you make up your mind to do something or something that you want, and yeah, I've experienced that as well. It's incredible how fast it comes when you do believe that it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if something hasn't manifested, there's always something there to work on. And for instance, like a typical example is like, I really want to manifest friendships, but you know, I don't have many friends, you know, or yeah, I don't have many friends, and you know, there's something where there's something there to work on. Like, okay, let me put it in better words. Okay, yeah. Let's say someone's had a group of friends and they've fallen out with these friends, right? Um, and their relationships have collapsed, like, you know, so some have collapsed like sorry, as time goes on. And there's like maybe there's a common theme, maybe there's a codependency theme. Maybe these people have codependent patterns. And this person's like, like I'm stuck, like I can't, nothing's like coming to me, no friendships. And then they go, hang on a minute. Why? Why am I not manifesting the people that I think I want? And then they look back at all the friendships that have collapsed and like recently, and then they see, oh, you know, they have some codependency patterns. Oh, but then I was going for those people. So what part of me is still saying yes to those people? So there's still work to be done. Because that's what I mean. If something's not manifesting, there's still work to be done, whether it's a split, a trauma, etc. There's another part going in the opposite direction, basically. And it's almost like this. And it's almost like we can't decide and the universe can't decide. Okay, what do you want? Like, you know? So, yeah, there's always, if something isn't there, there's always work to be done, basically.
I love it. Yep. We're constantly peeling back the layers and just discovering new parts of ourselves and how that's all playing into what we're manifesting or not.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything else you want to finish up with? We answered all the questions.
Oh, we did. Um, Let me just read the chat. I think there were some questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, hello to everyone who's in the chat as well. It's really nice that you're here as well. Can you talk more on how to prove our relationship with money and your mission on Earth? At the beginning, kind of at the beginning or in the middle, I talked about what I when I'm passionate. When this is uploaded, hopefully I can find the timestamp and share it with Lene, and we can put it in this. In terms of like improve your relationship with money, the first thing is like it depends on the individual. So it always depends on like what do you need, because it could be very different from what, say, someone else on the other side of the planet, how I'm going to tell them to improve their relationship with money, you know. um But how to improve your relationship with money? A common thing people can do is honestly like, what are you good at, and what do you like learning, like a skill that is good at, that you can be good at, um, because that's going to help basically. And something like I'm going to share my example. Like last year, I needed to make some more money, and I decided to learn about marketing. It's funny because a friend of mine 2 years ago, I remember in conversation, and we were talking about business, and I didn't know much about marketing, and then she told me, Damon, it's really stupid that you don't know much about marketing. And I, I felt like, oh my God, I felt like bad about myself, not in a shameful way, but like just bad. And I was like, oh gosh, but I really took on board what she said. And um, then last year, I remembered that and I started to learn marketing. And I was watching all these YouTube videos and I was studying from like 12 to 12, making notes, etc. And then I made an Etsy shop. And because of the marketing that I did, it became really successful, you know, early on. And I made quite a bit of money with that. If I didn't learn marketing, I would have just gone in there and tried to express myself or tried to do what I thought was right. And I would not have been successful. Like, for instance, I watched YouTubers saying like, "Oh, I set this Etsy shop up, and it takes like a month to make like a sale or like 10 sales." I remember when I made my Etsy shop and I put it out there and I published it and it was live, and I did not like when I stared at my shop. I did not like my banner, and the next day I spent like from like 12 to like 8 just like finding something on Canva and then editing it, just like so many hours, like maybe it was like 6 or 7 hours. Found something I liked, published it. The very next day, um, I got a sale, basically my first sale, and then it started to pick up and started to pick up. And so what I found was I was good at marketing, and I learned that. And so I used that, and I could use that for e-commerce or things like that, So with money, if you want to improve your relationship with it, find something you're really, really good at or something you can learn that you're good at and use it. And also, it always helps to keep in mind something that I learned was like, I didn't realize like how stuck I was that like, oh, I have to make money this way. And honestly, I was completely ignoring the fact that we have what we're on now, a phone, and we have the internet. And there are so many ways to make money on the internet, whether it's YouTube, AI, e-commerce, something like that, But always do something that you kind of like, not something that you don't like. I will always do something with money that I still like and still upholds my values of like, um, y- yeah, upholds my values. So yeah, I always do something that I kind of like, basically. So yeah, that's another way because I think that's a big thing. There's the other side, the typical side of like healing your trauma, but this is another thing. It's like expand our minds. So like, there's way more opportunities about making money, and find something that you can learn or that you already know you're good at, and put it out there. Like with me, I might set up um, I'm thinking once I become a CPCP this summer, I can use that money and put it into another Etsy shop, which is maybe making funny t-shirts or something, and use that as a third source of income, you know. And I never thought like 5 years ago maybe I'd do something with e-commerce or make t-shirts, but it's something that's I find a little bit fun, you know? And so it's like, okay, yeah, but that helps me survive on this planet, and that helps me live, and I can reinvest that and reinvest that, and I can reinvest that into my business and then to help more people and to reach more people. So Yeah, there's tons of there's quite a lot of ways. Yeah, So yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm just reading the chat. Lene, if you wanted to say anything, I can.
No, yeah, I agree with what you're saying about how it should be something that you like, because like for me when it came to manifesting money, I had to put that intention out there, like, oh, I hope my phone would ring right now, that somebody would want me. So what I'm doing is like animal care, helping people care for their animals.
Oh, that's
So
really beautiful.
yeah, so I would put it out there like, oh, I wish so and so would reach out to me. That'd be so nice if they would want me to walk their dogs. And literally 30 minutes later, that very person that I thought about, and I put it out there and I said, I hope this happens. I wish this would happen. That would be great. I put that out there, and then my phone rings and it's that person. So you do have to desire
Yeah,
it, right? Like whatever skill
yeah,
you have, whatever service you're going to provide, you have to be putting it out there, like, you want to do it and you're ready and willing to do it, and then it's just going to expand from there.
yes, absolutely. Wow, yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah, yeah, similar happened to me. Um, but yeah, that's really awesome. That's really awesome. You, animal care. That's so cool. Cool.
Yeah, I didn't even, you know, and at first when I started too, I didn't have any clients. I'm in a new state where I don't know anyone. And, you have to be patient, but just keep the vision, because you might, if you're not seeing instant success, you might think, oh, yeah, I can't do that. I better do this other thing.
Yes,
But
that is a really good point. Yes.
yeah, you don't give up on the original idea, you'll have breakthroughs and you'll see that it is possible and it can be done if you don't give up.
Yes, 100%. I definitely just want to add on to that is like it's the same with social media when someone's like, oh, I want to be really famous, and they're like putting out a video and they're like, oh, but it didn't get a million views on like Instagram, Oh man, like no, like say with my marketing, it's like if there's something not working, it's because I'm doing something that's not working. It's not like an outside force is against us or against me, etc. It's like, so and because of that also, like even with my Etsy shop, like I didn't just set it up like in a week. It took me like a month and a half of like every single day, just like watching YouTube videos that were hours long, watching interviews. I was even watching Dragon's Den. Um, I got into Shark Tank because because it helped me like learn more about business. But it was like I wanted to make everything perfect, and it was a grind. And even after my Etsy shop, with the algorithms, it's like that was a grind as well. So it's like do something you like, because if you do something you don't like and you grind for it, it's going to feel so resistant. But if you do something you do like and you grind for that, it's almost like a stress that you're saying yes to.
Mhm.
It's not a bad stress. It's almost like a form of resilience. It's almost like, yeah, it's like, yes, I can see the negatives and I can see the positives, and I say yes to both. Whereas if you do something you don't like and you grind for that, it's almost like, no, like I really don't want to do that. Like, it's a very different energy.
Yeah,
Mm,
and you're like, what? What's the vision? What's the end goal?
yeah.
And if you don't have that, then yeah, then it just feels soul sucking. And even
Yes.
if
Yes.
you try your best to bring purpose to it, but if there's no real like fulfillment or like long term goal with it, and it just sort of feels meaningless. So yeah, I might as well channel your energy and your efforts and into a vision that you really want to create and a life that you want to live.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Great way
Yes.
to end it.
Yeah. Yes. Just scrolling through the chat if there was anything else. Just reading the chat.
Mhm.
I helped my partner with his resistance to manifesting a new house. Now later we have the documents we needed and we're on the second home now. Now I'm in the process of improving my home. That's fantastic, Jean. That's fantastic. So helpful to hear. Hi from Jolie. Hi, thanks for sharing. Do you journal? Yeah, yeah, I journal. It's really helpful. I journal when I feel like it's kind of necessary. When like either I'm doing like parts work or healing, and like I journal just to keep a note because there's so many things, or maybe if I'm having a rough day, sometimes it really helps and like I'm stuck on something and I journal then, you know. So yeah, I journal sometimes, yeah. Um Pitchfork, Patty, I also know nothing about marketing. It's my least favorite part of being creative. Yeah. Jean, not yet. I'm not a CPCP yet, but unless that's what you meant by becoming, yeah, I will becoming a CPCP in summer. Um, so cool, it's working. I'm gonna call my podcast the Align Group. Awesome, awesome. That sounds fantastic. Yeah, that's the chat. Yeah, that's the chat.
Yeah, thank you everybody who was with us for this discussion and for participating in the chat. You guys are amazing. We really appreciate you.